What do we need to do to get koi to grow big? First things are water quality. Water quality plays an important part. Not just the nitrous cycle, that is ammonia, nitrate, nitrite, those sort of things. And you could break that down to calcium, magnesium, copper, whatever loading you have in your pond, which is what called your TDS. TDS is a abbreviated form for total dissolved solids, which makes up all the stuff in your pond and your water supply. Good or bad, it makes it up. Most of them are not good for koi. So generally, your TDS, or your total dissolved solids, the lower it is, the better it is for the fish. So ammonia plays an important part. Now, ammonia becomes more toxic to fish the higher the pH levels. So for example, if I have an ammonia reading here in my pond, which I don't by the way, of say 0.025 ppm, which is where most people hover, I test mine on my pollen test, and my ammonia is unreadable. It's so low they can't pick it up. Well, let's just say, for argument's sake, I treated the pond potassium permanganate and wrecked my bacteria and my ammonia spikes. Well, because I run a pH of 7, it's not as toxic to say if I had my pH at 8 or 7.6. So the higher up you go, the higher up of the pH scale you go, the more toxic ammonia becomes to the koi, and even it can become deadly. So one of the reasons we run a low pH is ammonia, so then you'll be able to cut any chance of having ammonia affecting your koi. But it's not just ammonia, because then you have something called KH, calcium hardness, and your GH in there. So my calcium hardness in this pond is below 1 degree. Probably, if in fact give you the milligrams, it's 12 milligrams. I've had it down to 6 milligrams. I've even had it down to 3 milligrams. I wouldn't recommend it. But the koi fine. My biosystem was fine. Most experts would use scientists and say that you need a certain amount of calcium to keep your biosystem alive. So hence they would probably buffer up their KH to say 5 or 6. To me, that is counterproductive. If you want a good medium, keeping a KH of 1 or 2 is acceptable. If you want to be like me, you can't be like me. There's only one of me. Thank the Lord. You get your KH lower as you can maintain it. Now I use something called a pH controller, and we'll cut away to that so you can see what it is. That pH controller helps me to pinpoint my pH and keep it within a certain radius. Not a KH controller. You don't need to control your KH, you need to control your pH. If you can control your pH, then the KH would land where it should be. As a general term, I'd expect a koi in my pond from Tosai being 35, 38 cm, possibly 40 cm. That by the time it's Yonsai, which is 4-year-old landed at Yonsai, come through Sansai to Yonsai, I'd expect that fish to hover in around 76 cm, possibly 78. I've had them up to 78. I've even had them up to 86, but that was a weird, crazy thing with this fish. You all know, the golden orgon. But as a Gosanki, I would say 74 to 76 is good. By the time the fish is in its 5-year-old, I'd want to be breaking the 81 to 82 centimeters mark. Because most fish would peak between 7 to 10-year-olds. There is exceptions, like there is with human beings. You could get some fish that will go on to be 12, 14, 15 years old and still keep a youthful looking vigor, a bit like myself. So there are exceptions, but it's generally, that's the rule of thumb. So keeping koi and getting koi big, it's not about the pond size. What about the pond size? What about the pond size? My pond, it's not massive, 65 6,500 gallons, whatever that is in liters for the Europeans, you work it out. It's not massive, but you've got to do something called water manipulation. That is, there's a feeling that people think your fish grow to the size of your pond or your fish tank or what have you. If you manipulate the water in such a way that it appears to the fish that the water is indeed bigger than it is, you'd find your fish would grow and grow massively. And you could do a number of things to do that. You can change a lot of trickle in, trickle out coming in. I recommend 15% a day. If you're on a water meter, you'll get a divorce. That's why you need recycle arrow. Now, with being September, I'm feeding, what am I feeding? Right, I'm feeding close to 700 grams a day. It will be up to a kilo a day in the next week or so. So I'd be wanting to change about 20% of my water. But with recycle arrow, I can achieve this without actually adding new water. And I recycle my existing water using the recycle arrow, a bit of science, taking out all the dirtiness from the water and replacing it with fresh, new, clean water with very good for the fish, removing everything. And that's the thing about arrow, it removes everything from the water, probably except chlorine, but hopefully you would not have chlorine in your pond. So growing koi massively, it's a little bit of a science, as you probably would appreciate. It's a little bit about getting the water right. It's a little bit about getting the right fish genetically. The fish must be able to tick all the boxes. There's no one magic ingredient. You need to get the water as a baseline right. So if you want to, if I'm going to give you a recommendation for what I consider the perfect water, here it is. You ready? Brace yourself. You may not have it. You may have it. pH of 6.95 to 7.02. TDS of around 60 to 100 parts per million, KH of 1, GH of 1. Then from there you have to select the fish that genetically have all the traits to grow, have the right head, the body, the skin, the pattern, the bone structure, the lineage, the parent, the bloodline, all those things, and then you put that in. Now hopefully you'll get the fish to feed, because some fish could be big and shy, or potentially could be big but they're shy feeders, so that's when you need something like a chagoy or an ogon or something like that to stir up the pond, get them feeding. When you do that, then you get the fish feeding a bit. And you need to feed the right food. Well, that is a debate in itself. Everybody has their food that they like. Every hobbyist would say, use this, use that, use this, use that. Well, I go back to my trips to Japan and I tend to feed sake hikari. It's expensive food, I know that. Not everybody could afford it, so if money was not a problem, sake hikari. When we talk about growing season, I would generally grow my koi from August, mid-August. I would begin to start turning the food up come July, end of July I should say. And come mid to the end of August, and now we're in September, and I'm hitting 700 grams a day. I would expect by the end of September, around the 20th or so, 25th, that I'd want to be feeding close to 800 grams to 1 kilo of food a day. And I would hold that all the way down to November. Now, I didn't mention one thing, and you're probably, for the learned among you, where there's lots of you who are learned, is water temperature is important. And obviously in the UK, it would be freezing around that time. So my pond is heated at 24 Celsius. 24 is probably optimal in my estimation, and talking to a few breeders and people I respect in the koi hobby who live in Japan, who have their own fish house in Japan. You know what I'm talking about. 24 Celsius is a good temperature to get your fish to grow, good digestion, good things like that. So really, in a nutshell, that is the thing. Now, one more thing I need to add. Because I'm 24 Celsius, by maybe mid-October, doom and gloom, I'm going to have to cover this pond so to keep the bills down a bit. One of the things I didn't mention is light. Because we suffer with winter darkness here in the UK. Depressing time. I've got these UFO lights, and that's what they call it. If you Google is a great tool, you know. If you just Google UFO lights, get the 200 watts one. They are good because they would help supplement the sunlight by all of the LED. They would add natural light, or it'll mimic natural light to help the colors on the fish. So I've got 2 of them. I only really need 1, but being a West Indian, you got to have 2. So there's 2 of them there, and they would supplement the light, and they work really well. Even for fish that has damaged itself or damaged themselves, then light up the thing and make it good. So in a sense, that is the science of it. In my last video, which was called "Why Did I Build a Koi Pond?" in my last video, that's talked about filtration and stuff, so I wouldn't go over that. But let me just add a drum and backy shower, genuine BHM, genuine thing, genuine BHM. No copies, no replica, no this one is as good as. Genuine BHM is my recommendation. I've seen ponds run off of a bottom drain. I'm not saying that you should do this, but I've seen ponds run off a bottom drain, no pre-filter, straight over showers back to the pond with genuine BHM, and the water quality as far as like ammonia, nitrate, nitrite, those things was fine. You couldn't see the fish because it was so murky, but in that way, and the fish, it ran for years. But when you get a fish from it, it was kind of like a lucky dip. You didn't know what you were getting out. In fact, the skin was perfect in all of them fish. I think it was 4,400 gallons that pond was. But in my estimation, if you want a simple yet very effective set of filtration, is go to a drum, any drum, except one of them. Go to an RDF drum, then go to a high flow pump. I use Flow Friend. Pelt the thing over the shower. At the moment I'm running 2100 RPMs over the shower, which is roughly probably close to, I don't know, 40,000 liters per hour over the pond. So I'm turning over the pond in that way. It's gases all. Gassing out is important. And as you can see, my pond is like a lake, middle lake, quiet, still, fish enjoying it, because it's not just about having crashing water and fish exercising. See, some say that you need your fish to exercise. Some people themselves need to exercise. Big fish don't like fast flow. They're not salmon or trout. These are koi. They're not designed to live in rivers and fast water. All of the original strains do. These things that are bred are not designed to live that way. Since filming some of that footage, it's now autumn, and as you can tell around you, if you live in the United Kingdom, the leaves are beginning to turn colors, the conkers are falling on the ground, things are changing dramatically, and a lot of koi keepers will probably be looking into insulating their pond because of the high energy costs that is incurring over winter. And indeed, we've seen the news that gas prices are on the rise and things like that. So it's not really fantastic news for the koi keeper with expenses and cost for a very costly hobby. Nonetheless, we're talking about growing koi. So in growing koi, this is the season that I would be feeding a lot. You can probably see from that shot that I've changed the feeder from my Profi feeder to a JBL feeder, trying to be able to put more food into the feeder and spend more time observing the fish. I don't feed them fully on the feeder. I do have it arranged in such a way, the timing in such a way that I'm still able to feed by hand, and then in that way observe the koi. I've been doing some work in the pond, insulating the fish house, fixing the roof thing. Feeding jumbo koi, it's all about getting the pond right. It's getting the turnover right, not too fast with big fish like I have in this pond of 90 centimeters plus, things like that. You want to get the flow just right. In this pond, turning over the pond 3 times in an hour, so there's a serious flow going in there, but equally not so much that it wears the big girls out because they're constantly fighting a stream. Also, the type of food you feed is important. I know there's lots of options, but I think as a serious koi keeper, probably sake hikari would be the number one choice for those who are serious koi keepers in that way. So we're growing the fish. They're being fed probably close to a kilo at the moment a day. Roughly that's what they're getting, and they're taking it all in. There's none going down the drain, so, or the skimmer line. So in growing jumbo koi, there are a number of things you want to look at, from your pond to your design of your pond to things like that, but also the fish that you choose ultimately will determine whether it's going to grow jumbo, whether it has the right frame, the right structure, the right backbone to it, where it's not too steep climbing up. Also, bloodlines do make an important part in the decision making, but also choose the fish in front of you. Genetically, fish will grow bigger than some, but you've got to put them in the right environment. 24 Celsius is where I'm at. We're out whole all the way to November. I'm probably feeding the fish 10 times a day by a feeder. I don't see any other way, looking at the breeders, how they grow their koi. Feeding them twice a day is going to actually make any difference in that way. So just a few things from me. Obviously, you can like and subscribe. Alright, so stay tuned. There's going to be another YouTube drop shortly, as I went up to Kitsu Koi and filmed some awesome koi and met some nice people up there. So peace out from Rasta Koi.